My name is Stephen Long, and I host a show here on Rock Candy called Sacred Tension, the podcast about the spiritual discipline of asking questions. We cover topics from LGBT issues to faith and doubt and mental health. We talk to biblical scholars and have conversations about religious abuse and leaving faith and finding it again. We also talk to pastors and skeptics and cult experts who are all sorting out their own journey of faith. Please join me in these conversations on Sacred Tension right here on Rock Candy.
Welcome to the 11 Life podcast.
What's up, everybody? Matt here, and welcome to this week's episode of 11 Life. I cannot be happier that you are joining us this week. If you are listening to this podcast right now, consider yourself to be a part of the 11 family. A huge shout out to everybody who's a part of the 11 Life community on Facebook. Much hugs and high fives to everybody who is hanging out over there. A lot of you already know this, but for those of you who are new to the show, we have some shows coming up. They're our first shows in probably 6 years as the band 11D7. They're coming up and we're playing them in our home state of South Carolina. One of them is in Greenville and the other is in Columbia. And we are getting so excited about playing these shows. We're watching a lot of you guys online make plans to be there. We're going to be hanging out with our friends in Glass Mansions for both of these shows. And you guys might remember them. They've been on the show before. They actually had an entire episode where we got to hang out with Blake and Jaina, and we are super pumped to be hanging out with them again. So if you want more information on those shows coming up, head on over to our Facebook page. You can find ticket info and everything else that you need. You can get to our Facebook page very quickly, no matter where you're listening to this podcast, just by clicking on the show notes for the show. And you should be able to get there in a jiff. Couple things to mention before we get into today's episode. A huge thank you to everybody who is following our band on Spotify. Spotify follows are as good as gold in the band world, and we really appreciate everybody who's taken the time to do that and to dive into all of the frenetic melee of noise that is 11D7. Also, for everybody who is asking about how you can best support the show or what we do, we have a small record label and a small online store. It's called Rock Candy Recordings. A lot of you 11D lifers are already aware of these kinds of things, but for everybody who's new to the show, we have an online store with tons of swag, hoodies, t-shirts, vinyl, tons of stuff on there, and every single purchase that you make on that store helps to fund the podcast, and it helps us keep ads off of the show. So we can't thank you guys enough for everybody who's already purchased something on there. Also, we got a brand new t-shirt design up in there that I think we added like a week and a half ago, and we already have a ton of orders for it. And guess what? As soon as this podcast intro is done, we're heading upstairs to our warehouse room to mail off all those orders. So brand new tees are heading out to 11D family members all around the globe in just a matter of minutes. My guest on today's show is a guy named Glenn Black, and he plays drums for a band called Luxury. Now, Luxury was an incredibly influential band in the late 90s that found themselves on Tooth and Nail. They have a brand new documentary coming out called Parallel Love. I was fortunate enough to get an advanced screening of this documentary, and I was completely enthralled with it the entire time. It is super cool. It's an amazing story, and you don't have to be into this band at all to appreciate this documentary. It was powerful. It was moving. I teared up. Not that I'm trying to emotionally manipulate anyone to go check this thing out, but I will say I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I wanted to reach out and get some of these members from this documentary on the show. Lo and behold, I find out that I'm actually living pretty much next door to one of the band members in this documentary, which is Glenn. He came by the Rock Candy Recordings studios, and we got to sit down and have a nice chat together, 11D lifestyle, and I loved it. What a treasure this man is. Anyway, the conversation's very long, so if you are the kind of person that has ADHD or you're distractible and you get bored super quickly, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to Glenn's band Luxury, and I promise that you will not regret looking them up. Just pull them up on Spotify, check out a few tunes, maybe get a little bit of context for the conversation. In the midst of the conversation, there's a cool idea. Anyway, love you guys. Hope that you enjoy this conversation, and on with the show. This is you. If you just want to get comfortable.
They don't let me speak in the microphone.
You have to. This is all about you, dude. This is all about you.
Not a thing that I do.
Sweet. Yeah. If you just want to give that a check for me real quick.
Okay.
Yada yada yada.
Check. One,
You
two.
you have to get it
Okay,
closer.
so I
to
have
that.
to get closer.
Yeah.
So I don't go cross-eyed with it. There you
This
go.
is the impression I get is that they haven't given you a lot of mic time.
That's very much true.
So the other guys in the band are most of the time the people that end up doing interviews.
Usually, it's always usually been Lee and Jamie, but now Chris does because Chris is a priest. Usually they don't interview bass players either, but
Yeah.
Chris is a priest now, so
This is
that's
you.
kind of bumped him up.
Yeah.
And sent me down a little bit lower.
Yeah.
It's like, well, Glenn's Lutheran and a drummer. Good gracious. How much farther down does he get to go?
Right. Yeah, I always found that so weird. Like when our band started doing interviews, I was like the singer, so I was the person that always got the questions because I feel like I had the most credible information in the band, but I was not the most interesting person to talk to in the band. It was always our drummer because he always had the best stories. He loved crowds. He loved attention. Like he excelled in it. Like he could become the life of the party very quickly. And the rest of us were not that way. We were kind of just like, well, when we have to be on stage, we'll get on stage. and then the rest of the time we're just like, okay, we're just kind of this weird nervous energy that I feel like we had. But he was fantastic. So I have every confidence that this is going to be this will be great. Yeah.
All right.
That's cool. So like right before we came down here, we were talking about did you grow up in Toccoa?
No. I grew up mainly in Michigan.
Okay.
Going to Toccoa, I followed my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Which is not, I don't advise that as sort of a career path. That's not the thing you do.
Girlfriends are not careers.
But to be honest, also, I was also going to study to be a missionary.
Well, so what age are we talking about here?
So I was 18. I didn't become a Christian until I was 17.
Okay.
I had no church background, nothing.
Yeah.
So it was all new to me.
Yeah.
I had no
frame of reference.
Like if someone had come up and said Jesus Christ to me prior to 17.
Yeah.
My only knowledge of that was as a curse word. That was it. Not as a deity.
Like you just heard angry adults just come out and be like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay.
So there was no sense there was no sense of church or any of that. And so when I came to faith, the church that I was going to had a missions conference.
Okay.
And there was a missionary and there was, kind of, how do you say, just like who will go out and do this work? Who will go out? And I was like, you mean, in a very odd sort of sense, you mean people don't know about this? Which the fact that I didn't know about it for the longest time,
right,
seems.
So you have like this like traveling evangelist type person that's like that. You're at this missions conference and you're kind of hearing this call to action. Or like,
sort of.
Do something with your life. Do something that matters.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay.
And so so Toccoa Falls, so it gets even weirder. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Please.
So my pastor is, at the time, is Jamie and Lee's dad.
Oh, wow.
So there's that. And he went to Toccoa.
Okay.
So at the time, Jamie and Lee are like junior high kids. So when I came to faith and I started attending church and started getting involved in youth group kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They're just young dudes who have never played any music at all.
Yeah.
And weren't even allowed to listen to music, let alone rock and roll. I mean, like Sandy Patty was kind of it.
Okay, so Lee and Jamie are both, their dad is a pastor.
Right.
And so they're kind of coming from this super like Protestant kind of muted cultural existence.
Right.
And then you end up at the same church.
Right. I end up at the same church.
And and you're saying you were older than them when you guys first met?
Yeah. So I came in between my junior and senior year.
Yeah.
And ended up, joining the church, going to youth group and so on. And it was very, I don't know, it was a very sort of enjoyable kind of deal for me because it was all brand new.
Yeah.
You hear about people who have brand new faith. I didn't grow up in it. I didn't have anything.
So what was it about it that you found so new? You have to have this close.
Oh, sorry.
You have to. Yeah.
Just that there was, what did I find enjoyable about it?
I mean, one of the things that I enjoyed about church was just like a sense of community.
Like it exactly.
There were people there. There were safe adults there. Not all of them, but.
Okay, so I walked in, and this is actually before I had come to faith. I walked in. I've got a leather jacket on. It's got Iron Maiden pins, Motley Crue pins.
Oh, so you're a badass. You're the outsider that comes in and shakes it all up.
that kind of deal.
Yeah.
And no one sort of batted an eye.
Yeah.
They were all just, we're really glad that you're here.
Yeah.
And that was so different. My only sort of frame of reference or thought process in relation to Christianity was two things. One, you had to cut your hair. And two, you could not listen to rock and roll. Right?
Yeah.
So anytime that anyone wanted, ask me to church or anything like that, I was just like, no, that's not, I wanted to be woodshedding. I wanted to be a better drummer. It seemed like a waste of time. The guys that I knew who were doing that stuff, were just wasting their time.
Wow. See, that seems so interesting to me because it sounds kind of like, on the one hand, you're saying like, I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted for this to be my life, but you're describing a very disciplined mindset about it. Like what did that actually mean to you? Was it like, I want validation, I want notoriety? What did the end of that road look like for you?
For me, it looked like being on the cover of Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
It looked like being on the cover of drumming magazines.
Okay.
That's what it felt like to me. That's what it looked like to me. Being a John Bonham, being a Keith Moon, being that guy, all those dudes that were my heroes.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like to me. Now, knowing that their lives were taken, at a very early age because of their lifestyle.
Right.
That didn't shake off the influence that they had on me as a drummer.
Yeah.
So it was all still about getting from that point to be able to be just a better drummer.
Yeah.
To be the best drummer that I could be.
That's awesome. So what was it that appealed to you about being on the cover of a magazine? What was it that appealed to you about sort of reaching that status? It sounds like you have this like really personal drive to sort of get there, but what's driving that? Like, where is that coming from?
Okay. So that came from when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and my uncle asked me if I wanted to stay up and watch the Midnight Special.
Okay.
Which was, I don't know if you know what the Midnight Special is. It was a TV show that had rock bands on. Yeah. And it played at midnight so.
Yeah. I mean, staying up past midnight when you're a kid is a big deal.
No false advertising. And I told him that I would not, I couldn't stay up. And he said, well, we'll set the alarm so that we can watch it. I was like, and I said, all right, let's do it.
Right.
And so he set the alarm. We woke up and there was this little, probably 12-inch black and white TV in his room.
Yeah.
And he turns it on and Kiss is on there. Black and white,
Right.
but it's Kiss. And I saw that.
Yeah.
And I was stunned.
Mm.
I was just amazed at what I had just seen. And I know, now people kind of look at it as, a joke, and, to some degree, they're not wrong. But back in, this would have been probably 77.
Yeah.
They were a band that was hungry, that was going for it, that was, blowing crap up.
Yeah.
And they were doing it.
Yeah.
It was before all the drugs and everything came into it. And they were just on fire, literally in Gene Simmons' case.
Oh my God.
And I saw that and I was like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And Peter Criss, I just thought, because I was already into drums. I got my first set when I was 7. So I was already inclined to be playing the drums.
Do you remember how you got your first set?
Yeah, it was given to me for my birthday when I was 7, and one of the neighbor kids wrecked it. And then I got another set, and these are toy sets because back then they didn't have the cool sets that they do for kids now.
Yeah.
They're sets with paper heads that you hit them twice and they break.
Right.
It was just, I was like, that's what and so I started doing things like designing what my own makeup would look like. And
I love this.
And writing, we started coming up with, and this is my friend Matt too, 5 houses down. We're coming up with band logos, and we're writing lyrics that sound like what Kiss lyrics would sound like. We're getting the 8 tracks for our birthdays and Christmas. So that's where the whole thing started for me. Yeah. Was with that. I was like, that combined with, because I also love comic books.
Yeah.
So that just made all the sense in the world to me.
Oh, wow.
Was like, it's like Batman and Kiss. It is just like all rolled in. It rolled it all into one.
Yeah.
I was like, I could be a superhero and I could play rock and roll.
Yes.
It just was, it was fantastic. I was like, I can do that. And so then from that point on, it was just a series of trying to find the right guys.
Yeah.
Guys who could play, and learning to play myself, and getting to the point where I found guys who could make a band and play music that was awesome. And I went through and we're talking from the age of 8.
Yeah.
Doing that. So the number of bands that I was in, trying to put bands together all those years until the Shroud/Luxury happened, I couldn't tell you the number of bands I was trying to put together, the number of people that I tried to work with. And then when Luxury happened, I was like, this is it.
Yeah.
These are the guys.
Yes.
This is the band. And I had absolute confidence, absolute belief that we were the band that would do it. And I had absolute belief whenever we played a show that no one was better than us. Now that was not always true because because sometimes we would play some shows and we would get blown off the stage, and that really, I hated that. But Lee's songwriting and stage presence was the thing that I was always missing.
Yeah.
Because I could never find a band with a front man.
Yeah.
He had that charisma, and it was fantastic. And we were all in.
Yeah.
And it was a exciting thing. It was fantastic. We were all in. And to find that is a rare thing.
Incredibly rare. Especially after you've gone through all of these different iterations, like since you were 8 putting together bands. I mean, by the time you get to your late teens, early 20s, you're kind of exhausted. I mean, I know you kind of have this like energy at that age, but it also can feel exhausting to feel like I've got these ambitions. I know exactly where I want to go. I belong on this magazine. I belong in Rolling Stone.
Yes.
Like this is my place, and I just need to find the right vehicle to get there.
Yes.
And especially like thinking about rural South, it feels like when I was a kid, felt like a wasteland of like, you're never going to find people that are into the same things as you. You're never going to find people that are into like the weird subcultures that you're into.
Right.
Like putting together a band feels like a really big deal in places like that. Now I have friends that like went to public schools in like bigger cities. And they're like, I could have started a band with 20 different people and we could have had fun with it and whatever because we've been there. But for us, it was not that way. So I can relate to the weird search for like-mindedness.
And then to find at that school,
at
Sequoia Falls,
yeah,
to find the 4 of us who were so different,
yeah,
who had such different musical backgrounds, musical interests,
yeah,
and put that together and have it be fantastic. Of course, it wasn't fantastic when we started, but but even then,
you can be proud. You can be proud of what you've done. Like,
yeah, when we started, I just knew that it was going to be amazing. I really did. And I just felt it. I just knew. And I still feel that way.
yeah,
That's the thing is I'm very proud of Luxury and the stuff that we've done. I'm really grateful that all came together. Now the stuff that, the accident and the other things, I mean, that's a drag.
yeah.
And it certainly changed the trajectory of the band. So,
well, see, that's something that I find kind of interesting. I'm probably going to do a promo for the upcoming documentary at the top of the episode.
okay.
But just like for everybody at home, I got a chance to kind of screen this movie. Like there's a whole documentary coming out about your band. One of the big plot points in the movie is you guys all experiencing this like pretty horrific car accident coming from one of the best shows you've ever played at Cornerstone. So I won't give anything away, but one of the things I noticed as I was watching all of your different band members sort of describe this experience, having you here now and expressing these feelings that you've been having, this trajectory that it seems like you got put on at the age of 8 even, like it makes me think about how your band changed after that crash in a different way, because it feels like I'm getting a little bit more like a personal insight into how massive of a shift that might have been for you. Maybe I'm projecting because I imagine myself feeling that way if I had gone through that. But like, what was that for you? Because I feel like everybody kind of felt it differently.
It was this sense of unknown.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult for me. And it took a long time.
Yeah.
After the accident. It took a long time for me after the accident for me to really let go of Luxury. Even after we did another tour and we did another record and we did another tour, and it just seemed like things kind of were done.
Yeah.
It took a long time for me to realize that we're not doing that. We're not doing the rock star thing. We're not doing that thing. We're not on that trajectory anymore. That was really hard after being on that, that lifelong dream.
What did that feel like for 8-year-old Glenn?
Oh my gosh. It was God, it was really difficult.
Yeah.
And I carried that with me a lot. And it was, I didn't want to start another band.
Mm.
And if I did start another band, which I eventually did, no other band was luxury.
Mm.
It always felt like, they say bands are marriages. I don't know if you
we
ever
say that almost every episode here, so you're in company, my friend.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And so every other band felt like the girlfriend that you don't really want to be with.
It's not going to work out.
Yeah, it's okay, but it's not really great, and you really wish that you were with your spouse. That's who you want to be with.
Of course.
And so when I would get calls to do a record,
yeah,
I would be very excited. And when Lee sent us a message about doing Trophies, the album that it's been, a good while ago, which hopefully will be coming out soon.
Yeah.
I was very, very excited.
Yeah.
At the prospect of doing new luxury music.
Of course.
Everything that has come with it. Now, of course, it was not an easy project to accomplish, because now
a lot of stuff's changed.
Yeah. I mean, now we're all older and kind of set in our ways, and in different fashion. But
well, I was gonna see, but before we move too far away from it, one of the things that I love asking people on this podcast is do you remember the worst moment that you ever experienced in your band, and do you remember the moment that you knew it wasn't going to work out?
The worst moment.
I mean, it could be a fight. We've had a bunch of them. We've had stuff getting thrown through windows. It can be like the scariest moment that you experience as a band. It can be people losing their temper. It can be any number of things, because bands are powder kegs.
I mean, aside from the accident, I tend to be the one who, and this always comes up when we're together.
Yeah.
The story, we were rehearsing a song. We were rehearsing a new song, and they're probably if they're listening to this, they're going to be like, I can't believe he's telling this story. We were rehearsing a new song. This was back when we were still playing a lot, and
yeah,
we had a show coming up, and I did not. Oh, sorry. Right. No, I was not confident in playing the song at this show. The rehearsal was say on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. The show was on a Friday.
Yeah.
And I was not confident that we should play the show or play the song.
Roughly what year is this?
This would have been, so it was before the accident. So we're going to go with maybe 93, 94. So before we got signed.
Yeah.
And we're bickering over the song. And we're playing in this basement. It's under it was under Foley's house, and it was not a finished basement.
Yeah.
So dirt floor kind of thing.
Oh my gosh.
And we're going back and forth. I'm like, no, we're not ready to play this song. And finally I climbed over my drums. I said, this is bullshit. I'm out of here. And I walk out. It's pouring rain. And I walk probably half a mile. Now, the problem with that is that I did not drive to rehearsal. So it wasn't like I could just get into a car and just leave. So I had to, turn around, come back, and sort of eat, and
that moment you realize you didn't drive yourself to rehearsal and you storm out of rehearsal.
Right, exactly. So I come back and we kind of worked it out. And I said,
well, you had to. You can't walk home in that weather.
So I said, you know what? Okay, we'll do it. And to be, well, let's just say I won.
So you didn't end up playing it. Do you remember what song it was?
No, we played it.
You did? Oh, okay. And so how did you win exactly? You embarrassed yourself? You didn't have a ride home and you still had to play.
Well, we played it and it didn't go too well.
Okay.
That's how I won.
Now,
at least that's my recollection. Maybe someone...
Did you intentionally sabotage it to prove a point?
No,
Are you that passive-aggressive, Glenn?
No, I did not. And so there's rarely a time when we get together where someone does not say,
this is bullshit.
This is bullshit. I'm out of here.
Oh my God. Oh man. That's awesome. That sounds like a pretty tame story. As you were telling that story, I was like, oh yeah, bands are marriage, aren't they? That's you're driving one car to everywhere you go. Oh man. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think we were always a pretty passive aggressive band. I think that's probably
like the whole band was?
Yeah. Just in general.
Is that stressful? Nobody ever being direct? Or do you guys kind of understand what was happening subtextually most of the time and just not verbalizing?
I probably shouldn't be saying this stuff.
Oh, now you know you really should.
Now I'm in for it, man. Yeah. I'm out of the band now. Yeah.
Not if you drive another member to practice.
They're dialing up other drummers as we speak.
Right.
They've already got like 2 other drummers on speed dial anyways. No, it was, I think that was the thing. And I was as guilty of it as anyone.
Yeah.
Just a lot of sarcasm.
Yes.
So it was very rarely when we were together, it was very rarely very direct about, oh, you did this. It would be like just a very sarcastic comment about
sassy.
Yeah.
Lots of sass.
And I've learned, and it's something I've taught my boys too, because my boys are very sarcastic as well. And I don't know where they get that from. But
I can't tell if you're joking right now. Like you really don't know where they get that from, or you're being sarcastic about it now.
But I've tried to tell them, there's a time and place, and you have to be careful because if you have a sharp tongue, it can be hurtful and spiteful to people. And it's a lesson that I wish I had learned a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because certainly I've been hurtful and spiteful to people when it wasn't necessary.
In the band?
Oh yeah.
What's something that you wish you could take back?
I couldn't tell you specifically, but I know that there were times because, you put 4 guys in a van, for a month or whatever.
Or for us, it was half an hour. So that's pretty amazing.
So you spend time on the road, and eventually you're just going to say stupid stuff, and it's not cool. It's not great, and it's hurtful. And you get to the end of it, and you realize, well, actually, maybe even at the end of it, you don't realize, but years later, you're like, that probably wasn't the coolest of things to do. And you try and figure out how to mend those fences and so on. But I figure, we've been together for a long time.
Yeah.
We started playing together in 91.
Yeah.
If you can keep a band together over those kind of years and still enjoy each other's company, and continue to make music.
I mean, I think that's kind of magical. It also kind of comes across in the way that you talk about luxury as being like almost your musical soulmate, within that sort of marriage metaphor of like every other band just feels like the girl that it's not going to work out with.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, my hope is that we continue to make music as long as it is reasonable to do so, and that everyone digs doing it.
Yeah.
And I certainly, there are always obstacles that, I mean, because we're spread across the Southeast, so it's not always easy to get together.
Yeah.
But when we do, we have a good time.
Do you remember the time in luxury that you felt the most joy?
There's been a lot of those times.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of those times. I would say even we did this Facebook Live, whatever, just several weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that was a time.
Talking about the documentary, or just like talking about band stuff, or?
No, we played.
Oh, you did a live performance on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a great thing.
Yeah.
Because you play some of those old songs, and you play, at least for me, playing, there's a song called Kill the Famous from our first record.
Yeah.
And we play that, and there's just like this wash of all these memories of playing that song.
Yeah.
And it all just comes together. I just like closed my eyes, and every lyric, all the drumming, everything, it all just came right back to me. And all the times that we had played it.
Yeah.
All those, it was amazing. It was wonderful. Even the crappiest of shows, I don't remember a time. Well, certainly there were not every show was fantastic, because there were some shows where we got blown off the stage. But I don't remember a show where I came off like I didn't enjoy playing.
Yeah, of course.
I just love being in that band. I don't know. I mean, it seems like an odd thing to say, I suppose. I mean, probably not everyone does that, but I just, when we get together, it's cool and we play those songs. Now, being in the studio maybe is a different thing. And learning the songs, learning new songs, that's a different animal.
Why are we so averse to that as people? It's like, for whatever reason, like sitting and writing something, allowing that process to happen, I always get really excited about it. But if you put it in a totally different scenario where it's like, we'll have to go learn a song, we're so averse to learning new things for some reason. And I feel it like as I get older, it's like, read a book. Well, I don't know. Is there like a YouTube tutorial about it that I can watch? Like, how can I ingest the most information without the least amount of with the least amount of buy-in that I have for it?
Well, our writing process has changed in a lot of ways. It used to be much more organic.
Yeah,
I think where we would all get together and just sort of hash through the songs.
Sure.
And we still kind of do that. Did
different people sort of bring ideas or tidbits to the table?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so now it tends to be more, Lee has already got a song that he's put together, and we kind of try and make that into a luxury song.
Interesting.
And it's a different way to operate.
Yeah.
Than it used to be. And also there's limited time to do so.
Yeah.
And then you've got limited time to accomplish that just in rehearsal, sort of pre-production.
Yeah.
Then trying to make that pre-production into a record.
And you're saying this looks different because when you guys were first starting out, the creative process felt a lot more like, well, we could be here for 12. We could be here for 2 or 3 days working this stuff out. That was what it was like for us. So maybe I'm projecting a little bit, but you're saying like now it seems like there's a lot more parameters on the time that you get to spend together.
That's exactly it. I mean, back in the day, we were rehearsing like twice a week because we were all living in Toccoa.
Yeah.
So we were this unit that we were playing all the time. We were rehearsing all the time, and we were just always together. And So it's become a much different process to get from point A to point B. But you learn something new on every record in terms of how you get from point A to point B. So how we did it on the last record, I think will work a little differently. Once, should we make another record?
Yeah.
We'll try and do something a little bit different that hopefully will make things work a little easier for everyone involved.
How do you feel like you fit into the creative atmosphere of the band or ecosystem of the band? do you feel like you have a lot of buy-in or say, or do you feel like parts are sort of given to you? Or
well, that's a super interesting question. It's been the thing that has changed for me is that Lee shows up with a demo that already has, he uses a drum machine or whatever drum program.
Yeah.
It's already sort of a song put together.
Right.
And he's already got sort of oh, dang.
You're fine.
He's already got an idea of what that looks like.
Yeah.
And so when I try to play the drums to it or kind of come up with my ideas to it, I become sort of the human drum machine piece to it. And that takes some doing.
Yeah.
So that part of it has become a real interesting / not easy piece for me. The other part to it, in previous records, I have recorded my drum tracks and then moved on.
Right.
And, for whatever reason, I was working, had to get home.
So you just kind of show up to the studio while the band's working on a record, you'd lay your parts down.
Did my stuff.
And then you kind of move on.
And then I'm done.
Okay.
And then they might ask if I have any thoughts on mixing, and usually it was make the drums as loud as possible. Which is your classic drummer take, right?
Yeah, of course.
So with this last record, the way we interacted was a lot of it was done online, which is a really unusual way to communicate creatively. And I would say not really an effective way to communicate creatively.
Yeah. It's not at all similar to being in a rehearsal space together or a studio and moving air together, being in the presence of another person, feeling the energy, feeling the vibe off of people. It's hard to have that moment where you sort of lock in with the rest of the band when you're just shooting ideas back and forth.
So, and the other piece to that is that I retired back in 2010 as a result of my epilepsy. I retired. I was a social worker.
Yeah.
So I've got a good bit more free time. I'm a stay-at-home dad. So I chose to take the path in terms of this last record of being more involved creatively.
So you decided that for yourself?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Because quite honestly, when we started down the path of making this record, I didn't know if this would be the last luxury record or not.
Do you ever fear that?
Well, at the time, I most certainly did. I kind of felt like if it was going to be, then I wanted to take advantage of being more involved creatively.
Yeah.
Since I had not done so.
You have all this bandwidth for creativity.
On the previous records.
Right.
Now, I don't know that my involvement creatively was received really well.
Well, what was the impression that you got? Was everybody passive aggressive about that too?
I think to a certain degree. I think we did our best to try and make it all work. But again, you're discussing things online.
Yeah.
and trying to figure it all out. And the other piece to that really too is that you got to figure we hadn't really been a band
Yeah.
in any real sense of the word for a good long time. So suddenly we're not only trying to become a band again, we're also trying to make a record. So all those things kind of come into play, and we're trying to make this all happen.
Was that fun or stressful for you?
Yes.
All of it. It was a lot of things.
It was because these are guys that I've known for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And they're my friends, and I love them, and it's great to hang out. But the creative piece to it,
yeah,
you're trying to figure that all out in a relatively short piece of time.
Sure.
Sense of time, something like that.
Amount of time.
There
Yes.
you go. Measure of time. I don't know, something like that. 12 feet of time.
Yeah. Cubic time.
Yeah, there you go. Metric system.
So like figuring all of that out, like, so first of all, I can relate to a lot of this stuff, but from the other side of the glass, because I feel like our old drummer who used to be in the band, who we made most of our records with, he like,
did you kick him out?
No.
That was like the guiltiest no that I've ever heard.
I know. I'm so, everything in my mind, I overcomplicate it. Like, he was not kicked out of the band in any way. He and I still have like a great friendship, a great working relationship. He actually was just here a few months ago doing a record for his new band. It was, I think we had a lot of those, a lot of similar situations where like we become a little bit older, you know, like our band ended because we couldn't figure out how to make the wheels go anymore. We got burned so hard with different management and trying to figure out how to, and this is something that I noticed in the documentary as I was watching on Luxury, just shaking that shit off your boots of being, of the second that you dip your toe in the water of the Christian music industry, the whole pool turns colors. I mean, and you spend your entire life. So I feel like we're at this place now where it's like, well, we have different goals for our band. We have different things that we like to do, different directions that we want to take. We don't have any interest in being a part of the Christian music industry. We're just a band ourselves doing our thing. I mean, much to probably the same way that maybe Luxury sees itself.
Yes.
But it's that weird sort of expectation that you feel the weight of on everybody else, or from everybody else, where it's like, well, we just want to be known as who we are right now. We don't want to be the band that did all of these records with a Christian record label and played all these Christian festivals. And like, it's a weird feeling because we're simultaneously grateful for all those opportunities and to meet all those people. And it opened up the whole planet to us to be able to tour and play shows and all of that stuff. But at the same time, it's like the Christian aspect of it has made it so muddy, has made it so weird. I feel like we're still kind of, at least me, I'm still working my way through all of that. Ultimately, that kind of ended up in me sort of leaving Christianity altogether, which is something that I found really interesting in the documentary, that 3 of your members are priests, and that it seems like on the outset that everybody still sort of subscribes to that well of information or of life or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So I always think that's kind of an interesting dynamic because I've seen it play out in different bands that sort of come out of that scene in different ways.
Right. That whole Christian scene was very odd. There's not really any other way to put it.
Yeah.
I mean, as you say, we're grateful for the people who loved our music.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable because I'll get people who will comment about our records and say, you know, your record helped me get through my senior year of college.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And that's a tremendous thing.
Yeah.
Especially when we were just a rock and roll band who was just doing our best to make great rock and roll / art. I mean, that's really what we were trying to do.
Which is so weird because I get the impression that you weren't affected by that scene as much. Like when I was watching the documentary, I almost felt like you guys were, like that was your goal. For some reason, you were all like Christians or all subscribed to that faith, but weren't really interested in taking the route of being involved in the Christian music industry, which is so weird because I grew up in a time where it was like if you were a Christian and you were into that kind of music, you had this whole subculture that you guys and a whole lot of the Tooth and Nail roster had built that like had created this sort of mountain to look forward to, like this thing, this place in an industry, in a market that like people like me coming up, like starting bands would be like, oh my God, if we could just get on Tooth and Nail, if we could just like put a record out on Tooth and Nail, that would be like the most badass thing that I could think of.
We didn't have any sense of what we were getting into. Signing with Tooth and Nail, the bands that we were playing, there were a couple bands that we were playing shows with that were getting signed to independent labels.
Yeah.
And
in the Toccoa area? Or
one was out of Clemson and one was out of Atlanta.
Okay.
And I know, at least for me personally, I was like, why aren't we getting signed? We are just as good.
We haven't been on Rolling Stone yet. So you're like,
right,
guys,
yeah,
pick
exactly.
up the pace.
Come on. and I remember it, I think before we went to Cornerstone, we were at a rehearsal and we actually had a conversation. I could be remembering this slightly wrong in terms of the timing. But talking about whether we would sign with Tooth and Nail. And, you know, I'm the oldest in the band. And I believe it was Chris saying something along the lines of, we got to get something going. Glenn is 27 now.
Oh my God.
You know, he's just about over the hill. If we don't get something going now, we're about done.
When you're in your early 20s, 27 seems like, well, I hope you saved for retirement.
His expiration date is almost up. But
my God.
So signing with Tooth and Nail, I think for us was just signing a record deal. We didn't know when we played the Christian shows in Atlanta, they were people that we knew. They didn't, to my recollection, they didn't feel quite as weird because they were folks that we knew, and so they were more or less regular
So you're
shows.
like Christian bands in the area, or
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so there were, you know, we played some festivals and things, and
yeah.
I mean, I guess, you know, it had sort of that weirdness to it, but it wasn't near what we would go on to experience, like when we would go out on tour. Some of the stuff that we would experience, signing with Tooth and Nail felt like just a step, towards
whatever was next,
towards towards Rolling Stone.
Rolling Stone, yeah.
You know, because I remember calling my wife. I had my second seizure before we played that impromptu stage, which meant that I would be diagnosed with epilepsy. I called my wife and said, good news, bad news. Good news, we got a record deal. Bad news, I'm going to be diagnosed, because that's what the doctor had said. You have another seizure, you'll be diagnosed, and we will start you on medication. Starting into the path of when we started touring and doing those Christian shows, like when we toured with Morella's Forest, some of those shows, it's no wonder some of those kids, you know, rejected Christianity, and rejected that whole thing as a result, because the people who were running some of those gigs were bad.
brother.
They were bad people.
I feel like you're being very kind, even now.
I mean, it was shocking, and I remember there was one show that we played that the guy who was running it was a skate park, and the guy said that before you guys go on, I'm just going to do this devotional.
Oh my God.
And
I heard that so many times.
What they did, it was in a bad part of town.
Yeah.
And they locked the gates.
Oh my God.
They locked the gates. This guy gets up there and starts preaching. He went on for 45 minutes and just berates these kids. And then basically forces them to come up and put money into the tray.
And like an offering?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
What's going on, Glenn?
We didn't know. We were like,
right now?
We were stunned. We're all, so, I mean, for us, it was problematic because, the gates are locked and closed, so we couldn't leave. 1, 2, we didn't have money to get to the next show, so we were relying on getting paid from this show. So that we would have a place to, sleep that night.
So you're kind of hoping that the kids put money in the because it's probably where your guarantee's coming from.
Actually, that's probably true. All we knew is that it was a bad thing that was going on.
Yeah.
And so
had you ever seen that before?
No.
Really?
Really? No, we had never seen that kind of thing. And so when we got up on stage, I'm trying to remember who played first, because this was with Morales, and they got up there, and I think their guitar player said something about it, like this is not acceptable. And when we got up there, of course, Chris, with his DC hardcore punk rock background, he got up there and he's all indignant. He's like, this isn't cool, we don't, which was hilarious. But I love that about him because, he just was, he was just telling it like it is. But, by that point, it's already said and done. It's like the damage is done.
Yeah.
And so when I see these people on, on social media who are talking about what's been done to them in the Christian market, or, in Christianity, churches, whatever, recovering from the Christian music scene, that's what I think of. And it's, I think it's hard for me personally to understand why people would take advantage of kids like that. But I like to think that their heart was in the right place and their methodology was just way off the map.
Yeah.
and I suppose that's giving him giving some people the benefit of the doubt.
I mean, I feel like I encountered all types in our time there. We definitely ran across some people who it was like just kind-hearted people, didn't know any better. Like, we're doing this for the kingdom. This is what life's about. This is like, we believe this to be absolute truth, and we got to get as many people in the door before God closes them. And there was that, which I always thought was kind of like a really bleak interpretation of the awesomeness of existence. And I never quite could get that to sit well with me. Like, so there's a good place, there's a bad place, and we're just trying to get as many people in the door as we can before they close. But then why and how do we know any of this is true? And but at the same time, we experienced a lot of that sort of the shame culture of people where it's like, no, these are people that were projecting a lot of their insecurities, a lot of their internal issues, a lot of their neuroses onto people. And because they were using Christian rhetoric, they were getting away with being given audiences, like taking the stage in a lot of these places and using shame to emotionally manipulate or control, or just to project their own neuroses onto other people. And I feel like it wore on us after a while. to where it would just be like, it sucked all the joy out of doing it. Because you love being in front of people and playing and sharing that experience. But we hated the idea that somehow we're also being tied to this message about life and about how to experience it fully that felt so tainted to us and so manipulative. And so like it was taking advantage of the attention of impressionable people. And it never set well with us. So I think at the end of the day, we're like, well, we like the perks of being a part of this industry, if you can call them that, but why be in something that's constantly harassing your conscience?
Now, did you grow up in the church?
I did. I grew up very, very Southern Baptist, Protestant, strict, militant,
got it,
sort of interpretation of the Bible and all that jazz. And when I got into college, everybody kind of goes through their weird college phase where it's like, what does it even mean, man? So I definitely went through that, but it was only after taking an opportunity, much like I would assume that Luxury did, where it's like a Christian-ish record label offered us the opportunity and the excuse to tour and do something that we wanted to do with our lives, which is be in front of people and play.
Right.
And so we accepted it, not at all knowing what that was going to look like or how that was going to poison the well for us. Yeah. So anyway,
I think the thing for us though was, even though we had those experiences, we were always the same band either way. Wherever we played, whether we were playing a bar, whether we were playing, someplace like that.
Yeah.
It never changed who we were.
Right.
We were the same band essentially from the time we started.
Yeah.
We were the same people. We never, from the time we started, we never sat around and talked theology, or we never, we didn't pray before our rehearsals.
Yeah.
or that kind of thing. That was not who we were.
You don't get credit for them in heaven if you don't pray beforehand, Glenn. You know this.
Yeah, so
this is 101.
I don't even think that we really discussed much what church we were all individually going to, except for Jamie and his wife are the godparents of my oldest. And at the time he was not Orthodox. So obviously my wife and I were married in the Lutheran Church in 1990. Nicholas was baptized in the Lutheran Church in 93. So, those kinds of things were touch points as far as, they knew that I was Lutheran. I'm not sure when the Orthodox, I'm trying to remember when that started to happen. It was a few years, I want to say like 93, 94, something like that.
Yeah.
But we didn't really, we never had those kind of conversations between us a whole lot, at least within the context of the band.
Yeah.
We were just a band. We played rock and roll. We tried to make the best rock and roll we could, the best art we could. And wherever we played, we played the best shows that we could.
Yeah.
And we didn't change that for anyone.
I think that's called having integrity, Glenn.
Well, and I think that's it. That's exactly it.
Right.
We didn't, we didn't show up and say, oh, we're playing at
Grace United Methodist Church.
Exactly. Although I will say this, towards the end of, I guess it was the Morales Forest tour, we were in Columbus, Ohio, and we were playing in a church. And I started to feel like, you know what, maybe this isn't the coolest place for us to be doing our thing. Because it is, after all, a house of worship. This is where people come to worship God, not a place where people come to, get their rock out.
They're supposed to be hiding in the rock there, not getting their rock out.
And it was not, and since we were not a band that was there to, do the altar call kind of thing, and, we were not there to to lead people in worship. That was not our gig.
We had somebody offer us money one time. Extra
To
money.
do what?
Extra money to do an altar call.
Wow.
We got there and they told us, they were like, so at the end of your set, whenever, you're kind of giving your altar call message, will you just like kind of let us know kind of how you're going to do that? And we said, we don't do that. That's not our place. And that's not what we're here for. Like, we're here to do our thing. Like, much in the same way that you're describing, it's like, we're here to put on the best show that we can.
How much
right
did they
here.
offer you?
I think it was like $50 or $100. It was like one of those where
well,
it's like,
maybe for $100 we might.
I know, but it's like for $100, you're going to give this disingenuous call to action that's supposed to be like the most important decision that these people ever make in their lives. And it's like,
my goodness.
we have no business being a part of this, and we don't know who you are. You don't know who we are.
Right.
You don't know what we're going to invite people to, and we don't know what we're leaving kids here with you guys. So why can't we just have this like really amicable business transaction where we come in and rock and roll and leave, and we don't have to bring Jesus into it because it's too messy. It's too weird of a thing. And supposedly it's too important of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like, we're not here to be important. We're not here to do an important thing.
And the result of when I had that experience at that show and kind of just like having that sort of realization, and people started asking me to play drums at church, which I
love that grunt.
I didn't feel real good about playing drums for church.
Really?
Because playing drums for me was always performance.
Yeah.
And so playing drums at church would have been performance, not what was intended to be was leading people in worship. Or at least that's how they have it intended. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I could never really reconcile that.
Mm.
And so I would do it, but I could never really do it with, cause I want to like lay out a great fill, I want to play.
You can't have a great fill be your offering before the Lord, Glenn.
Well, I suppose that's true, but the problem is that it's always still performance to me.
Yeah.
It's not. And I suppose if people are getting it, then.
So it sounds like you have this really hard
cool.
line between like performance and worship, and that they don't equate to one another.
It's a really difficult thing for me. Now, my oldest son, he plays and he does not have that issue.
Yeah.
But I stopped playing because I couldn't do it. I kept playing for a long time, but it was a struggle for me.
Just internally, like rectifying the two.
Right.
Do you feel like it would have been too, I don't know, hoity-toity of you to get on stage and perform? Did it feel too self-centric while the Christian doctrine is very much about being selfless and it not being about you and it being about something greater? And
yeah, I think there's a lot of that there.
Okay.
And also at our church, there's sort of that service that has, the band thing going on.
Yeah.
But then, and our main service is the liturgical service.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to be. I want to be in the liturgy, in the divine service.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm sort of the old soul in that sense. Now, the divine service at the Lutheran Church is not the same as what our priests are putting down.
Right.
But but it's still a cool thing, and that's one of the reasons I love the Lutheran Church.
Yeah.
When we first started attending the Lutheran Church, our pastor said that even if my sermon is terrible,
please still pay me.
Well, he said that as well. No, he said that you will always get the word of God through the liturgy. And that's always
in
been
an email.
always been something that's stuck with me and has been important to me.
So it sounds like you're still very much a subscriber to the Christian faith, to the maybe even I guess Lutheran.
Yeah. I never felt the need, even given the experiences that we had, that never changed my faith, because my faith was never placed in some of the bozos that I experienced, or these people that were doing things that were clearly wrong.
Yeah.
That's not where my faith was. And so I didn't have to worry. I mean, certainly I experienced hypocrisy in many different forms in many different places.
Yeah.
But, my faith wasn't placed in people.
Sure.
And so I was always all right.
Yeah.
And I never felt the need to say, well, you know what? You guys are a bunch of yahoos. Screw you. I'm out of here. This is bullshit. I'm out of here.
Well, yeah.
To bring it full circle.
So basically you never had band practice at church. Is that what I'm getting?
Right.
Yeah. Man. It also sounds like you experienced something that maybe, and I might be making an assumption here, but something that you really did crave at the time, maybe something that filled a lot of the holes in your bucket at the time in your life when you were kind of introduced to Christianity and church, and you kind of found, I don't know, maybe a place and community, a sense of friendship or belonging or kinship. Am I right in that? Am I off base?
I think that you are correct, and you've seen the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So without giving a lot away, there was some, the way I grew up had some, had some difficulties.
Yeah.
So the church, certainly the church and Christianity, faith were things that certainly filled those needs, the community, but ultimately it had to not be about those people. I had to learn that I couldn't just rely on those people for my faith. And that's always been super important to me. And especially and my father came to faith late in life as well. And as my boys are growing up and they are Christians, that they make the faith their own, that it's not something that we just sort of cram into their brains and say, okay, you must be Christians, and this is, you have to believe because we believe.
Yeah.
It's something that you have to make your own, and you believe because you choose to believe it. And I think that's very important.
Sure.
It's important for anyone and I think that was part of the youth group mentality, was that everyone would kind of believe out of peer pressure, or, you were going to the concerts and everything was, a cheerleader kind of thing, rah, Jesus sort of thing. You didn't want to get left behind because, everyone's doing it.
I know. I always wondered why we needed so many pep rallies for something that was so important.
Right. And see, I didn't really understand that either. I didn't experience it. I went to a, okay, so many crazy stories. I went to a Christian concert before I came to faith. And
was this like early 90s?
No, this was 80s.
Okay.
So I was in high school. This would have been probably 82, 83, a band called Resurrection Band, Res Band.
Res Band.
My uncle took me, and they, because they were a hard rock band, and they would play, and they were pretty good.
Yeah.
And then they would stop, and they would, someone would just like talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
Yeah.
I had no idea what they were talking about. I just wanted them to shut up and start playing rock and roll again.
Right.
I had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
They're talking about Jesus and spirit and so on. It's just like, just shush, just play rock and roll.
Get loud.
And then at the end, everyone is raising their hands, their arms, and they're just like wandering about, and they're going down front and raising their arms. And, it's just like I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Yes.
No idea what's going on. And my other friend that came, he's not a believer either, but I think his mom was. He kind of had a clue as to what was going on, but he wasn't buying into it. And we're both laughing. We think it's hysterical.
Yes.
And then my other best friend, he's there. He absolutely knows what's going on, and he's like keeping it close to him.
Yeah.
It was the night before Easter.
Oh, okay.
So everyone's
pretty important.
Everyone is celebrating the resurrection.
Yeah.
I don't know what the resurrection is. I have absolutely no idea. And everyone's going about, they're celebrating. And
all you know is that it has a band.
Right, exactly. I'm like, these people are lunatics. Why are they not playing rock and roll? And they're just like walking around with their arms in the air.
Yeah.
Like, this is bananas.
Yeah.
And after the show, we were driving home, and my uncle said, "So what do you think?" I said, those people are weird.
Yeah, I try not to.
But I ended up becoming a Christian at a Petra concert of all things.
Oh my God, Petra.
I know, right? So I went with some people from this church, and they're doing the same thing. They're playing. I'm like, oh. And they're not even rocking. That's the thing. They're not even rocking. I'm like,
Petra's
oh,
not.
Man. And then finally the guy does a drum solo, and he's got double kick thing going on. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then they're getting ready. They're doing the altar call thing.
Yeah.
And he's talking, and like suddenly I'm like, whoa, this makes sense. It was like my eyes were open, and suddenly I understood what he was saying.
Yeah.
And then he says, if you come down front, we'll have someone to pray with you and give you a Bible.
Right.
I was like, are you kidding me?
And get your
I
information.
am not coming down front with those weirdos. There is no chance in the world that I am going down front with these freaks.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm praying the prayer, but I am not getting anywhere near you guys.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone for like a month that I had prayed the prayer. I was like, no.
I mean, it's so as I'm hearing you talk about this, just let me push back a little bit. I had those experiences growing up too.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there was so much pressure put on this moment. Like what you basically have to do sounds like magical thinking, which is you say this specific prayer, this spell, this chant, this thing.
Right.
It's somehow just saying those words secures your place in eternity. It ensures that you still remain conscious for whatever's next. And I think that the more I kind of saw that play out, and the more I saw the weight put on that, like I've had these moments of clarity in my life where, you kind of get these weird little, I call them sort of glimpses behind the curtain. Like you get to kind of see the code in the matrix for a second. And they just kind of happen in these weird and sometimes benign ways in life where things just sort of click and they make sense. And I feel like when I was a kid, part of my experience growing up was just like, it wasn't so much that I was excited about being able to get into heaven, that I didn't know whether or not that actually existed. I realized that I had a need for my life to have purpose and meaning. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, or that that's what I was feeling at the time. But it was sort of this moment of clarity of like, I might be unfulfilled. Like at some point I could be, or I might feel that way. And I think it would just like, I'm still trying to figure that out. Like I'm still having these moments of like, I feel like a lot of my spiritual experiences, I see all these different Christian parallels with my reality that's going on now. But the Christian parallels that I find, I feel like mean something to me because I've lived some life, because I've gotten some experience like in the real world.
Right.
Because I've been a part, like I've been a part of things. I've experienced loss. I've experienced grief, joy, pain,
Right.
this whole spectrum of human emotion. And when you're basically like trying to get kids to understand the importance of what they're doing, instead of encouraging them to go live life, and then let's come back to it whenever you have a frame of reference for this stuff, always kind of felt a little bit weird to me. Like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was weird. I mean, there's no question about it. I wouldn't, and I think that's why I didn't tell anyone.
Were you embarrassed? Because it's vulnerable.
I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
I just didn't. I didn't know what to do with that information. I didn't have a frame of reference for it.
But it just felt important to you?
Yeah.
What was it that made it feel important?
Well, it felt like there was some spiritual connection there.
Yeah.
That I'd never experienced or had before.
Yeah.
I was going to church, but there was no, Christians have all this language that they use.
Yes, the rhetoric.
That doesn't make any sense. If you're not part of the club, you don't know the lingo.
Yeah.
You don't know the language.
It's like walking into the IT department.
So there's all this language.
Yeah.
And so you go to church, and if you're not part of the club, you don't know the language. And so I was going to church, didn't know the language. And so I'd had that experience for, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And didn't tell anyone. And they had communion. This was probably a month later. You know how it goes, where they give you the warning of you can't have,
Yes.
don't take communion unworthily, right?
The kind of God we serve is one that if you do communion wrong,
right,
you're screwed.
Right. And so I wouldn't take communion because not that I understood it, but I was like, okay, well,
but you knew there was a high risk of failure.
right, exactly. So
I mean, can you imagine getting up to heaven and having God say you ate the cracker when you shouldn't have? Like it's
you're done. You're out. Sorry. So I went. So and at this particular church, it was one where they, pass it down the rows and so on. And I was sitting with a friend from school, and she passes it to me, and I partake.
Yeah.
And pass it down. And you could see her eyes get huge because
she knew you had just contracted herpes. I'm just
because she knew one of two things: either I had taken unworthily, or I had become a Christian.
Oh man!
And in either case, I had just blown her mind. So after church, she came out. We come out, and
so you guys got to talk about what happened.
And she says, to me,
yeah,
you're not supposed to.
Was she scared for your soul?
I don't know.
She was scared that you had blown it.
I don't. She just says, you're not supposed to partake if you're not a believer. And I said, yeah, I know. And that's all I said. And then I started walking away.
You're like, I know, right? Wouldn't that be awful if somebody did that?
I just said, yeah, I know. And then I just started to walk away. And then she and suddenly she's like,
she came and gave you a hug.
Yeah.
Gave you a promise ring.
And suddenly, and then everyone at the church is like, because I still have my Iron Maiden pin and my Motley Crue pin and my leather jacket and so on. And
oh yeah.
And suddenly it's like, oh, the heathen is.
They live for those kinds of conversion stories, Glenn.
Oh man, I've got more. Come on, it's.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I don't mean to digress the conversation at all, but I was wondering if you remember what the terms of that initial deal were that you guys ended up signing with tooth and nail. Because I like to put a number on something and look back at it later and say, well, this is what the next 10 years of my life was worth.
I believe it was, are you talking like the number of records or?
Like how many options, you know,
I think it
did they
was
have?
two with an option for a third.
Okay.
Is what we had signed.
Yeah.
So
Did you get an advance?
yes, what it went for.
Please tell me how much your advance was. It can't have been a lot.
I don't even know. I got a bass drum case that went to drums that didn't belong to me.
Oh my gosh. You're being offered a record deal. You still don't own your own set of drums.
Well, what had happened was...
What would Bonham think? That you were uncommitted?
He'd be like, you're a sucker. Jerk. He would slap me.
Right. So
and then he would give me like some beer and
beer with Bonham.
Yeah, beer with Bonham.
Maybe
Hey,
that
that's a
happens
podcast.
for you one day. Beer with Bonham.
Beer with Bonham. Beer with Bonham. So the drum thing was the drums that I'd had since high school, and they were in pretty bad shape because I never had cases for them. When we got signed, Matt Goldman, who is the all-around good guy, amazing drummer, fantastic producer.
Who is the beep that you heard?
Oh, really?
Everybody at home listening to the podcast, the beep was actually Matt Goldman on my notifications.
All-around good guy, fantastic producer.
Yeah.
Amazing drummer. He said, well, you know, if you're going to be in a band on a record label, you should have great drums. So
he would say that.
So he allowed me to borrow these champagne sparkle Slingerlands.
Oh, wow.
That were just wonderful. But they did not have a case for the kick drum.
Okay.
So when we were recording with Steve Hindalong in Nashville, one of the first things we did is we went to a music shop and bought a case for the kick drum. That's all I remember using any of the advance for. I remember being excited like we were going to go out and buy some CDs or something, but I don't. But I don't remember actually doing that.
That's awesome. I just remember we basically got peanuts for ours. But it was the most.
Did you guys sign with Tooth and Nail?
No. We signed with a record label called Flicker that was basically like the guys in Audio Adrenaline trying to start their own version of Tooth and Nail.
Oh, okay.
And so they were like, we were a really weird fit for that label. They had like Pillar, Staple, and like all these like super heavy band. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You didn't miss out on anything. I'm gonna get shit for that later. But yeah. So, but I remember it was the most money I'd ever seen in my life that I ever had a check written to me for, and I went out and bought a used JCM 2000 amp from a friend of mine.
Wow.
who was playing in a local band, and he was like, yeah, I'm just ready to sell my head. And I was like, I'll buy it from you. It was the most expensive piece of gear I've ever. I think I paid him $750 for it. But our advance was something like $2,500. I think what we did was we ended up splitting it like 4 ways or something, like one for expenses or to go towards like a van fund because we knew we were going to have to buy a new van at some point. And then we all got to splurge on basically pro level gear that we were going to need.
That was the thing. We never had good gear.
Never?
No.
So you guys weren't like tone junkies. It was just like whatever works.
Yep. Even this last time when we were playing the Facebook Live thing.
Yeah.
It's always been a matter of convenience.
Yeah.
Whatever you have. So there was a set of drums there.
Yeah.
Matt said, well, you can bring your drums, but Chris was coming to pick me up. We were going to get in kind of late. And I said, well, if there's drums there, we'll save time to just set up. You know, I mean, they're already set up. I'll just play them. Yeah. You know, I'll just walk in and we'll rock, right? They were good enough. They weren't great. But,
yeah.
So yeah, I I didn't get a new set of drums until probably like, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
See, this is so weird to me because as a musician, especially kind of putting my producer hat on, I would be like, I listened to even those like those first 3 luxury records that you guys did on when you did 2. Did you do 2 of them on Tooth and Nail?
2 for Tooth and Nail.
2 for Tooth and Nail, and then this one actually I was listening to on Spotify. Your drum work seems so nuanced and frenetic and very like specific to that genre or that style. And the way that the guitars kind of like work together, they're very layered. It gave me the impression as I was listening to it that you guys would be the exact opposite, that you would be like tone fanatics, like, oh, we need this specific, like we got to get this chime out of the amp, and that you probably have like a really specific way that you keep your snare to kind of grab your ghost notes. And I don't know, it's just kind of weird because I'm super into all that stuff, but that's basically my life. So
no,
like, maybe I'm projecting way too much.
Before I got those, because I had those drums when we did that first album, both albums actually with Goldman.
Yeah.
Or I mean, the first 2 Tooth and Nail albums. Before that, this is terrible. If I couldn't get a good sound on a snare drum,
yeah,
a lot of times I would just trade it.
Oh my God.
We were sharing some rehearsal space.
Yeah.
With these guys, and I was just having a difficult time with this snare. The guy in the other room, he had this wonderful metal snare, and it sounded fantastic.
Yeah,
and he loved this wood snare that I had. He just said, "Hey, you want to trade?"
I'll trade you straight up, bro.
Yeah. I said, "Absolutely." And his sounded great. Mine sounded terrible.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't want to take the time to mess with it.
Wow.
And my kick pedal would come apart all the time. Jamie would like cut pieces of his guitar strap off because it was before chain driven pedals.
So you just had the little belt strip there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So he would like, it would come off during a show, and he would cut off a piece of his guitar strap, and he would just.
Oh my God.
I know that's
was bonkers.
And I didn't have a cymbal case. I had this blanket. This was my blankie from when I was like little.
Oh my God.
And I wrapped my cymbals in this blue blanket. I actually still have the blanket. We would roll up. I would unwrap my cymbals out of this blue blanket. I would put my cymbals up, and then I would put the cymbal or the blanket into my kick drum. That's how I muffled my kick drum.
Oh.
That was it.
High utility for the blanket.
Right.
That blanket had no idea it was going to see so much life.
So that was the thing. I mean, it was just like whatever
Band-Aids and toothpicks.
Whatever worked.
Like.
We would just roll up. And I think that people didn't really expect too much of us because we would just roll up with, whatever. Then we would just do our thing, and
yeah,
people would be like, whoa.
Yeah. Wow. So tell me this. If you could go back, this is just a thought experiment. I know it's like, sometimes it's not healthy to do these, but if you could go back and change one decision that you made in the band, maybe because you think there would be a better outcome, or maybe just because you don't care what the other outcome would be, you're just unhappy with the decision that you made, what would you go back and change?
The decision to sign with Tooth and Nail would be it. Absolutely. Now, the thing is, you can sign with any independent label and end up playing any number of little crappy shows in the same fashion.
Right.
Difference being that signing with Tooth and Nail, you end up playing the Christian subculture crappy shows. Which is not really where we wanted to be.
Sure.
So I think that would have, would that have changed? That has implications in a lot of ways. That would have not put us back at Cornerstone the next year, because that was a specific request by Brandon for us to come back up and play Tooth and Nail, where we have the accident afterwards.
Yeah.
But I think mainly just not getting involved in the Christian subculture.
Yeah.
Shows kind of thing, because that's that's not really where we ever belonged.
Yeah.
We were just not that band. We never were.
Yeah.
And people did not understand that we were not that band.
I've always find that interesting because I feel like it's like once you get associated with it, people make all of these assumptions about you, and it doesn't matter what you do. They're always framing how they're interpreting what you're doing by these spiritual assumptions that they make about you, that like, oh, that they must be struggling with this, or they must, they're just going through a phase right now and they'll end up back at Christ here any minute, or they're trying to channel what it would be like to be an unbeliever in this lyric, or it was all of that just weird minutia that we're just like, we felt so disconnected from.
And see, we never bothered with it. That was the thing, is that it never played for us. It was not anything that we ever gave any thought to.
Yeah.
Lee wrote his lyrics, we played the songs. It was not even on our radar until Lee had to write explanation for lyrics, or the Christian bookstores didn't want to carry our albums.
Yeah.
When that stuff started to happen, then we were like, oh, that's problematic. But we still didn't really care.
I mean, at that point, I feel like you either have to head in the exact opposite direction and sort of leverage that in a PR way. Like we're that band. We got kicked out of Christian bookstores, and now, we're total badasses. Also, have you seen this like jacket that I wore when I got saved? I mean, I don't know how you actually like play that out. I just mean, like, regardless, if you associate yourself with it, then you're sort of tied to one of two narratives, I feel like.
Yeah, it just never occurred to us to really tie ourselves either way.
Yeah.
We were just luxury doing our thing.
Yeah.
And then the accident happened, and and no one was really there. There was no communication with Tooth and Nail
After the accident.
Yeah, there wasn't really any communication with them. At least to my knowledge, until we decided to.
Did you guys have a lawyer at the time?
No.
I mean, you didn't even have a belt for your kick drum. I remember asking you if you had a lawyer.
No, the thing is, we were a band that assumed that just by nature of being what we considered, and personally, what I considered being like the best band.
Yeah.
But didn't know how to take the basic steps in terms of organizational skills, management kind of skills, those kinds of things. The other, and a good chunk of that, the realization there is that, and this will date us, but we were sort of pre-internet, which is a weird thing to say, but you got to figure we signed with Tooth and Nail in 94. So not everyone had PCs. You didn't see a ton of people with PCs and, doing internet kind of stuff and having that kind of access to just go on and, look for, you weren't Googling how to manage a band.
Right.
Kind of things. It wasn't there. You had to find a book on.
Or just know the right person to ask.
Right. And we were in Toccoa.
Yeah. Sucks for you.
So the right thing to do, in retrospect, for the band early on would have been to move to Atlanta, which we had talked about doing and we just didn't do for, whatever variety of reasons. But there was always just this sense that by virtue of being a great band, great things would happen. Which is wrong. It's wrong. If you're listening to this and that's how you think, it's wrong. That's not the way it works.
I always think that's so weird. Like, you're right. That's not how it works. At the same time, I feel like it's hard to impress upon people the importance of like bettering yourself, of being the absolute best that you can. I feel like it's fewer and fewer people that I run into have this intrinsic drive, like it sounds like Luxury did, to be the best band. What I feel like I hear from a lot of bands now is success for the sake of success. Like, we don't want to be the best band. We want to be the biggest band.
Oh,
And the biggest equals the best. So the more impressions that we have, the bigger the stage is, the higher the platform, the more valuable, the more social currency that we have to wield here, then the better our band is, which, quality and exposure are not the same thing. Like a lot of things that are really low quality have high exposure. So I think it's just kind of cool that it sounds like. Do you think the rest of your band felt like this as well? Like it was like, let's do our art the artiest way we can art.
I believe that we were all pretty much on the same page in terms of let's just be it always felt like we were a gang.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how it felt, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of how it felt like. I mean, we could bag on each other, but if anyone would have said to me, like, Lee's not a great singer, I would have been like, no, screw you. Lee's the best singer around, or any of the other guys. And I would take exception if anyone especially in the early days when we were just making our little demos that really weren't super great. But if anyone would say, well, that's not that great, I'd be like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And when we would get bad reviews when our first album came out, it took me a while before I could see the humor in it.
You mean haters?
Yeah, when people would give us bad reviews, which of course you get bad reviews.
Oh, all the time.
It took me a while before I could not take that personally.
Yeah.
Whether it would be talking about, the layers of guitar, or the drums banging away, or whatever it was.
Right.
You don't know.
Yeah.
You haven't seen us. You don't know. If you see us, you'll know. You'll know.
I've only seen people dote on your band, but I think that's because of the documentary. And it's like, you're not going to put somebody who just like hates luxury in the documentary, sprinkle in there like, oh my God, they were terrible. Like in the middle of everybody just being like, oh my God, they were so amazing. I mean, I think that makes for great television, but not everybody feels like I do. Oh man. Well, tell me this, because we've totally done our time.
Okay.
And I feel like I could talk to you all day about this kind of stuff. I think that a lot of people that listen to the conversation that you and I had are for sure going to want to check out the documentary.
Okay.
But just get really personal with me about that for a second. Like because you've probably seen a lot of different cuts of the documentary while it's in process. And what do you feel like is the thing that people might not take away from the documentary that you hoped that they would?
Might not take away.
Because there's something that you wanted conveyed or expressed in the documentary that maybe didn't make the final cut, or didn't get added, or like maybe the story was tilted or colored in a direction that you might see it differently.
I can't think of anything really. I think Matt did a great job of telling the story.
Yeah.
I can say this, that it was hard for me to watch the first time that I got an edit of it.
Yeah.
Especially the accident part.
Just reliving all of that.
Because you go back through that, and it's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
And obviously there are other parts, without giving stuff away, but I think that it tells a good story. You don't have to know who we are. That's the great thing about it, is that you don't have to know who Luxury is.
Yeah. And
you can still enjoy the film.
Yeah.
And the other great thing too is that you can come away from it and want to know who we are. Yeah. And be like, how did I miss this band? Because they obviously have to be great. So
yeah, without tooting your own horn.
Because I don't do that enough, right? This has been what, like the hour of Glenn just like talking about how much he loves luxury.
That's why I wanted you here. My takeaway from this is like, absolutely. Everybody that's listening, please go see this documentary, because I was entranced by it. But also at the same time, what I really appreciate is that I get to go back and listen to this podcast and the things that we talked about. And already just having seen the documentary gives me a different connection to it. The way that you perceive things, the way that I heard the story, even just in our conversation that we've had over the past couple hours here, I'm just like, I would ask totally different questions of you or of other members of your band. I'm hoping that we can get Lee on here at some point to kind of give his take on everything.
He won't
too.
laugh as much.
He won't. He's a pretty serious guy.
Yeah, he's kind of a serious guy.
Well, I'm glad I got the fun one. But yeah, that's awesome. Dude, thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
11T Life is a production of Rock Candy Recordings and Rock Candy Media. Every time you subscribe to 11T Life, a unicorn disembowels your greatest fear.